Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Faustine Chan. I'm the Business Innovation Manager for BBB serving the Pacific Southwest. Today's webinar is being recorded, so if anytime you do miss any of the information, it will be available for you online as well. If you do have any questions, just make sure you just type them in the chat option. We can answer those as we go along. We do have a great sponsor today that I'd like to recognize. We have SDG&E, and I'd like to give the floor to Tashonda Taylor, who is the Vice President of Customer Operations for San Diego Gas and Electric, one of Sempra's Energy's regulated California utilities. She is responsible for customer field services, customer programs, and business services. Taylor began her career at SDG&E over 20 years ago as an electrical engineer in engineering rotation program and has held a number of leadership positions within the company, including Director of Design and Construction Management and Director of Safety, Wellness, and Employee Care Services. In addition, she has served in numerous other leadership roles in project management, construction, and operations and engineering. She also currently serves on the board of the San Diego Children's Discovery Museum. She has previously served on the board of Elementary Institute of Science, and she's also a lifetime member of the National Society of Black Engineers. She's also earned a Bachelor's of Science in Electrical and Electronic Engineering from California State University, Sacramento, and a Master of Business Administration from the National University. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Shachanda.
Good morning. Let me start out by thanking the Better Business Bureau for organizing this webinar and promoting dialogue to help create more inclusive workplaces. And thank you to all the attendees for taking time out of your busy schedule to learn about the importance of diversity and inclusion in creating engaged and high-performing teams. This webinar touches on a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and issues that I know many of us and our companies have been taking a hard look at. In the wake of the death of George Floyd and others that sparked worldwide protests over racial injustice, I am fortunate to work for a company that values diversity and inclusion as a competitive advantage. Being a champion of people is one of our key values. In recent months, both my employer, SDG&E, and our parent company, Sempra Energy, have come to recognize that much more needs to be done. And we have stepped up our efforts to address racial inequity in our workplace and to fight systemic racism in our society. One of the first steps we took is to host company-wide community conversations about the recent events and invite our employees to share very personal impacts of race and racism in their lives and in our communities. These dialogues have evolved into a way for both employees and management to build awareness of the issues and to start to chart a path forward. I have participated in every one of these company-wide town halls and have had many conversations on the side with colleagues. It's not easy having these conversations. It can be uncomfortable at times, but it's so important to create an environment where people feel safe to talk openly about racial disparities, implicit bias, and other issues. The feedback that we have received from employees is informing the next steps our company is taking, including developing a racial equity action plan and hiring a director of diversity and inclusion. Our parent company, Sempra, is also hiring a chief diversity officer. While we have a strong track record of contracting with diverse suppliers, our supply management team is taking another look to see how we can improve upon what we've done. Last year, about 41% of the goods and services that SDG&E purchased, over $635 million, came from diverse suppliers. Our supplier diversity spending is nearly double the percentage requirement set by the state agency that regulates utilities. Half of SDG&E's workforce are people of color. We believe strongly that when our company workforce reflects the diversity of the communities we serve, it makes us better at meeting our customer needs. When I think of diversity, I think of it in many forms. Beyond race and ethnicity, we have 8 employee-led diversity and inclusion councils at our company, including one focused on supporting veterans. Gender diversity is another important area of focus at our company. Our CEO, Caroline Nguyen, is an engineer and champion of an initiative called Be That Girl. This mentoring and outreach program is all about getting girls interested in careers in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. Many leaders at our company, both men and women, volunteer for this initiative, including myself, and I'm proud to be a girl engineer. In her capacity as the chair of the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce, our CEO is also leading the All Our Talent, Women on Boards and Commissions initiative. The goal of this initiative is to increase the number of women serving in leadership positions across the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. If you are interested in this, please visit the Chamber's website to register for the All Our Talent Legislative Summit. This virtual event is taking place tomorrow, and it will bring women leaders to discuss policies to advance gender parity, pay equity, and other topics. I want to close by emphasizing the importance of mentorship and helping to create diverse and dynamic workplaces. I am a beneficiary of great mentors who have helped me get where I am today. To pay it forward, I am active in programs and organizations such as the Be That Girl Initiative and the National Society of Black Engineers to help cultivate the next generation of diverse leaders. Please consider becoming a mentor because you can make a difference. Thank you for having me, and thank you for being a part of this webinar to help create more inclusive workplaces. With that, I will turn it back over to Faustine.
Thank you so much, Shashonda, and thank you, SDG&E, for sponsoring today's webinar. We greatly appreciate our partnership and your support in this issue. Shashonda won't be available for any questions, so if you do have any questions for her, please send them my way and can make sure to forward it to her so she can connect with you and answer those questions. But thank you so much, Shashonda, and thank you for SDG&E as well. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce both of our speakers today at this time. I'd like to welcome Brian Stinson and also Jen Coyne. Jen Coyne serves as a CEO and a majority leader and owner who brings perspective of a women-owned business leader as well as a background as a CPA and credentialed project management professional. Over the past 20 years, she's developed a successful high track record of developing high-performing teams and an engaged and committed workforce in the high-tech and financial service industries. Her experience in creating and delivering organizational and leadership training and development spans over 2 decades, which she now leverages to create a unique, proactive, and thought-leading products and services for the peak fleet. We also have Brian Stinson, who brings a diverse background in engineering and people systems expertise. During his 21 years at Intel, he learned to combine the science of data and analytics with the power of empathy and authentic relationships to effectively solve real-world business problems. In the last role with his company, he was responsible for the workforce strategy for Intel's 6,000-person worldwide IT organization. In his role, he decided to balance his career dedicated to organizational development, and he launched a Peak Fleet, which represents an opportunity to help the greatest number of organizations unlock their full potential. So please welcome both our speakers today, Jen and Brian.
Of course, now there's a very large garbage truck right outside my window. Thank you, Faustine. Welcome, everybody, and congratulations for making an investment in yourselves today. We were honored when Faustine and the BBB asked us to speak on this important topic. We're, as you probably could tell from our introductions, we're very passionate about workplace culture. And when it comes to diversity, equity, justice, inclusion, these are all really important aspects of workplace culture. There's a bit of a what versus a why, a what and why versus how. And in terms of how, these topics can sometimes be very heavy. Sometimes training can lead to fatigue. Our approach to the how in this space is what you see here. Is we really feel like every workplace culture can be irresistible, and who doesn't want that, right? When we go to the next slide. So I mentioned we a couple times. Thank you for the introduction. We can probably just be very brief with on the left. That is, oh yeah, let's move on to, well, the one thing I will say is that, you know, Jen and I did spend 20 years together in high tech, and our passion is we did this IT stuff and other really cool things, you know, in high tech. Our passion was people and culture and organizational health, and we left in 2016 because we really wanted to pursue our passion. We had clarity of purpose, and that's when we launched the Peak Fleet. So the Peak Fleet is all about creating irresistible work culture, and we do that with clients across industries, different sizes, also with schools and nonprofits. That you know, how we accomplish creating irresistible work culture is specific to every client, but there is one thing that's in common, and that's a values-based approach. And in fact, we identified our core values before we even founded our company, and that's the Peak in the Peak Fleet. It stands for persistence, empathy, authenticity, and kindness. The Fleet part of our company name is our collection of consultants and mentors and thought leaders that help us deliver our products and services. So today you're actually getting a Reader's Digest version of a much longer, much more involved workshop that we typically deliver to intact teams. What the one thing is in common with all of our workshops is that we want you to walk away today with a common vocabulary. You're going to learn something, so we will hopefully increase your acumen, but we also feel very strongly that we don't want to just train people. We want change. We are in the business of change. So all of our workshops include some type of action plan, including today. We will have a very small, or at least a very brief template for you that you can actually download and start the process of creating change in your organization. So here's the agenda. We're going to, it's jam-packed because we cherry-picked a whole bunch of really great content from a much larger workshop. So we're gonna have to go quickly through certain sections. Before we get started, we thought it was really important to talk about creating a safe environment. That's critical for you know, really the main ingredient for great culture is trust, and trust comes from being able to be vulnerable with one another, and that requires as a prerequisite a safe environment. So we're going to do that again here today. We're all learning, including Jen and I. We make mistakes, you make mistakes. We're all going to assume good intent. We're going to practice and get better. It's absolutely okay here and in your daily lives to ask questions, to disagree. We do ask that you do that respectfully. It's also really important to know and to be comfortable that when there is a different behavior that you would like to see, that it's okay to ask about that. For instance, I have a tendency to say, hey, you guys, how's it going? And that's something that I'm trying to change because not everybody is a guy. And so that's something that if for instance, it was something you would like to see different, then we should have a space where we can address that. Now, sometimes, why don't you go ahead and build this all the way out, Jen? Sometimes we run into people that think this stuff, this air quote stuff is woo-woo and fluffy. Well, it turns out it's really good business and it's absolutely good for the bottom line. There's a lot of information here. What I will just leave you with, and if you want more information, send us a note and we can follow up with you. But the economics of culture and of having an irresistible workplace, which does include diverse teams and inclusive work culture, that highly engaged employees are twice as productive as unengaged employees. And when you have disengagement, so if you have some kind of a cultural problem, that actually robs money in terms of productivity at the cost of about $500 billion a year. And so when we have all of these ingredients of great irresistible culture, you see lower absenteeism, better safety, better quality, better productivity, better innovations. All of the good business metrics, or all of the important business metrics, will go up when you have high engagement, great culture. So at this point, I think I've mentioned irresistible workplace culture several times, and you're probably wondering, what is it? Well, I am an engineer, and we should be able to define and measure everything. So let's at least define what an irresistible workplace looks like. First and foremost, purpose. Starting with a sense of purpose, having a sense of purpose, having this feeling that your work matters. I already mentioned that trust is absolutely foundational for high-performing organizations, and that comes with the ability to be vulnerable with your peers. An organization that values individuality, that places an importance on diversity, yet strives for equity and fairness, a place where you're not just sort of tolerated for sharing your ideas, but you're actually encouraged, a desire for flexibility, and a team that isn't just coworkers, but it feels like family to you. That is our definition of an irresistible workplace culture. And we do think everything does begin with culture. So in terms of getting started, we thought it'd be great to hear from you. I just defined what we think an irresistible workplace culture is. Now, not all of these things are equal in every organization or to every person. So Faustine, have you had a chance to load the first polling question? Yep, there we go. So I would like you to answer, of these 6 things, which one is the most important to you?
I think are all the questions showing up or just that one?
Just the one. So
Okay, I can't see on my end.
Actually, I see them all.
Okay, so
Oh, you
everyone
do.
just go ahead and answer just the first question right now.
And what I'm seeing, Faustine, is that you can't, I don't think I can submit with just the one. You have to answer them all, so.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, make a note to yourself while we update the polling question. Make a note to yourself of which one is the most important to you, and we'll move on. There are a couple other polling questions later. So this is so when it comes to diversity, this is something that Jen designed, and it was. I need to move this out of the way. Go ahead and I think you can go ahead and build it out, right? So the research shows that diverse teams will always outperform homogeneous ones over the long term. While there's a lot of organizations that say recognize we need to be more diverse, what we often see is that they go and try and solve for X, meaning they try to increase diversity in one area. And the challenge is if you always solve for X, then you're always going to be solving for X. What we recommend is that you, first of all, recognize that diversity comes in so many different ways. You know, while gender diversity and ethnic diversity are so important, there's a lot of other things that make us different. And so this visual, while we could probably spend a whole hour on it by itself, it's just what we want you to remember is that there's a lot of things that make us different, and that you know, typically you hire for skills that are important to your group. We recommend that you even more so hire for cultural fit, and then on top of that, that you also think about every new person to your organization. If they bring something new and different, if they increase your diversity in one of these many ways, whether it's, you know, generational differences, location differences, you know, work experience, educational experience, there's so many things. The more diversity that you have, the stronger your organization will be. So I suspect that, Faustine, you have not had a chance yet to fix the polling question. So
I think it's fixed now. Let me try with everybody.
So the first question, we were just curious what was most important to you personally. Now the question is, in terms of your organization, the organization that you represent, which one is the one that you would like to see? Sorry, actually we're on question 2 now. So question, relaunch polling. So it's not working for me, but
let's see.
Is that the one?
Yes. Yes. That was question 2. So you could leave that up and have people answer it.
Oh, and I feel like I probably shouldn't be touching the polling question since I'm a host. So the question here is, what is the one that you would like to see the most improvement in your workplace? And I'm going to close the poll for me.
You may have closed it.
For everybody? Did I ruin it?
Yeah, I don't see it anymore.
Okay, well.
Oh, there it is. Hang on.
Do you have the results?
Don't touch anything. All right. Now people can answer this one, I think.
Okay, there we go. Thanks for your patience, everybody. So trust, valuing individuality. So actually 4 out of 6, 2 people said trust. Yeah, so they're all important. There's good stuff, sense of trust. Okay, so we closed it. Okay, so thank you for that. It's my one interpretation is that so the 2 areas that this group feels is fairly strong is the desire for flexibility, which I guess is something we're all learning to do better at, and then a team that feels like friends and family. That's great. So but the one that rose to the top is around creating a sense of trust. Let's see. So where are we at next? Oh, so here we go. In terms of ingredients, and so again, we've talked a lot about irresistible work culture. We showed the definition, the framework that we use. We believe culture has this taxonomy of intentions and abilities. And intentions, we talk about purpose, values, and vision, and then our abilities are around measures, behaviors, processes, and structures. In the middle is purpose. Purpose really is that main ingredient. And so this is a framework we use for a lot of what we do. And I think it also helps set the stage today for what we're going to talk about. And speaking of talking about more great stuff, I'm going to hand it over now to my partner, Jen.
And of course, now I have a plane flying over my head right now. Virtual environments. Hello, everybody. So what Brian talked about with intentions and abilities, that encompasses everything that your organization does. And now we want to shift into really focusing on how inclusion, how diversity, a lot of these concepts that were introduced at the beginning play into this. And what Shoshanda talked about at the beginning from SDG&E was around corporate social responsibility, and specifically talking about, their investment in justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we're going to get into that. And it matters around CSR, corporate social responsibility, because your consumers, all of our consumers as business people, want businesses to take a lead on this issue. It's not just up to communities, it's not up to government, alone to address these issues. 78% of people want companies to address social justice issues. And as potential employees, potential customers, they will decline to do business or come to work for companies that conflict with their beliefs. And so, we talk a lot about values in our organization, as Brian mentioned, that it's important to show you what your values are and to lean into those values by really investing in and addressing those cultural issues, those social issues that matter to you. So that becomes part of your values that we talked about on the last page here. It's a part of the vision that you outline, including inclusiveness, and it falls into the behaviors, the measures, all of it, right? So if you use that construct, we'll talk more about how we want to see diversity and inclusion become ubiquitous across everything that you do a little bit later. But first, just for a level setting and creating that common vocabulary, we want to make sure that everyone has an understanding of the words justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion that are in the context of these social movements, of these cultural movements that are important to us. From a justice perspective, which we won't address as much today, but is very important, all of these actions, whether within a corporate setting, nonprofit setting, a government setting, should be surrounding dismantling those barriers that provide that or take away opportunities in society. So we want to dismantle those so that everybody from an individual and community standpoint can take advantage of those things and live a full life. Where equity comes into play, and if you've seen other presentations about DEI in the past, you often will see that characterization of people needing maybe different ladders to reach the apples in the tree, so to speak. Equity isn't about giving equal opportunity to everyone in what you give them, but you're creating an equal opportunity to succeed. And to do that, you have to have fair access for all people. And you have to look at all of those intersections, right? Where people have different needs for the barriers that they have, for the privileges that they may have, to level that out to provide that equal opportunity for success. Brian showed you that intersectional sort of topographical map earlier, and that addresses diversity. Diversity is about all the different ways that people differ. There are certain types of diverse populations we tend to focus on who have been subjected to the most oppression or had the most barriers put in place. But ultimately, every person, regardless of what individual characteristics they have, become that topographical map, where you're from, what kind of socioeconomic status you're in or grew up in. All of those things create steps forward or steps back for you. And so it's important to understand how people fit into that and to consider all of those attributes when you're creating a more inclusive environment. Which brings me to the word inclusion, which is that act of creating that environment where a person feels welcome, feels supported, where that equal opportunity for success is created, and where they're really fully valued to participate. Now, these aren't the, Webster's dictionary definitions. These are definitions that are sort of collated from how these fit into the social movement that we're all trying to drive. There are real benefits to businesses for having a more diverse workplace. Studies have shown that 15% of companies are more likely to outperform those companies that have less gender diversity. And when you look at ethnically diverse companies, they're 35% more likely to outperform. And so this isn't just a good social thing to do. This is great for business as well. There's a lot more to it as well. Diversity leads to creative strength, which leads to innovation. And the studies here show that a company is 6 times more likely to be innovative when you bring together a diverse group of people. They're almost 2 times more likely to be leaders in their market, and the revenues are going to be higher when diversity is above average as well, double digits. So, if you are, as we are, and as, coming from high tech, we were constantly under pressure to innovate, bringing in those different perspectives that understand what new offerings are needed, what are different ways to solve problems and come at new design issues. If you bring together a diverse team, you're always going to have better results. Not to, blast you with all the statistics, but more to arm you with some compelling evidence that this is an important thing to do. You're more likely to have better outcomes, 8 times more likely to have better outcomes when you have diverse companies. And as we mentioned earlier, a couple pages ago, it's not only about attracting customers, it's about attracting top talent. So the more diverse your company is, the more attractive it is to top talent, especially those that are coming out from younger generations. Younger generations disproportionately value these things even higher. And so those numbers are only going to go up. So I think, Faustine, we're ready for polling question number 3, if you happen to have it. And that is, just curious as we go along so we can tailor the conversation a little bit, what is the extent of your JEDI programming right now? Are you just getting started? Do you have a basic program and processes in place and someone maybe in charge of leading that? Are you further down the maturity curve where these concepts are integrated, maybe into all of your talent management practices, your hiring, your development, you have mentorship programs, things along those lines. And really the highest level of maturity is where JEDI is embedded into all the aspects of your experiences, your employees' experience from the time they join, from the time they even are attracted to your company, all the way through their experience. Is it also the customers, when you're marketing, all of those aspects, are you seeing those elements in there? And let's see if I don't think I can flash it up, Brian. I don't know if you can flash the results, or Faustine, if you can flash the results. Wow, so it's kind of on both ends of the spectrum. We have just getting started with 60%, and then 40% say that JEDI is embedded into all aspects of their experiences. So that's great, and it provides a good segue. If you are just getting started, I'm going to show you some thoughts around how we envision seeing inclusion becoming a part of everything. And if you're at the top of that maturity curve, maybe these will give you a few more elements to consider. So as Brian mentioned earlier, in that, again, referencing back to that topographical map of all the aspects of diversity, you don't want to just solve one area or solve for one element. The idea is to examine all the different aspects of your organization, all of those things that are external facing, all of those relationships with partners like vendors, suppliers, even when you are hiring, a new law firm, how are you considering the diverse aspects of that provider to you? We want to see inclusion be considered as part of the processes across all of these things. How are your social media posts considering how things are going to land with different populations of people? I think that one of the things we want to encourage is that, you don't brand everything as a diversity effort, right? This should become woven into the fabric of your organization. I think that Brian mentioned rightfully the notion of fatigue. And I think anytime you have a program or a large effort, people go, oh, here we go again with these things, right? There will be resistors. And that's just the reality of it. And, we always say that we speak honestly about the challenges. And so you're going to have people that are on the leading edge of this. You're going to have people that don't feel like change is necessary. And so one of the tactics that can be effective is when you make things more inclusive for the most maybe marginalized or unconsidered groups, you make it better for everybody. And here's an example I would give. I worked previously in an area where I did a lot of work in making content more accessible to folks with disabilities. Now, when you close caption something, you make that easier to interact with for everyone. Maybe you can't have your speaker on one day, you've got that now captioned, you can read it, but that is also helping somebody who's hearing impaired, right? So you don't have to brand that as a diversity effort. You don't have to brand that even as an inclusion effort. These are just things you consider, and then you make things more accessible to everyone. So we've got sort of a framework that I want to share that helps to sort of organize all of these things for you. The first thing is your foundational shared principles, right? We talked earlier about those elements to organizational success. things like defining your purpose, defining your vision, defining your values. These are foundational principles, things like your mission that will hang around for a very, very long time. It also means that they don't change very often and may not have been reconsidered in a really long time. So it's really important as you embark on this to look back at those things that have been long-standing foundational principles of your organization and see whether they really fit the future. One thing we didn't talk about, Brian, that we normally talk about is the future of work, and the fact that very soon, I think in the next 15 years or so, over half the population will not be white anymore. And so we're seeing a increase in the diversity of individuals in our society. Our organizations need to start to mirror that. And as they do, there's different needs, right? There's different perspectives, there's different views when you look at those foundational elements of a company. And so you need to put a different lens on from the one you've had in the past. The next part of the framework is really those day-to-day techniques to increase your empathy and behavioral awareness. For us at Peak Fleet, and I'm wearing my values shirt today, the E is for empathy, and becoming more adept as individuals in an organization at perspective taking, at being aware of your own behavior, and as Brian mentioned, the saying you guys. I say that all the time, and I actually did have a woman came up to me ironically at a presentation I was facilitating as a panel I was facilitating about internalized misogyny. And ironically, I know that I used the phrase "you guys" a few times. That, even though, I tend to think of guys as everybody, and I think that that's the way people view it, it still does have a gendered connotation. So that ironically was part of my own internalized misogyny that I need to think about, right? And be aware of my own behavior. And, I spent 4 years living in Texas, so I'm using y'all. That's my new technique, right? So these are small things, these are difficult things, and they're things that require your own awareness of your bias. And I don't think, Brian, we have in the resources, but one place that is really good if you want to assess your own behavioral awareness and your own implicit bias is there's I think it's Implicit Bias or Project Implicit from Harvard. They have a number of tests and your results will probably surprise you. So bringing these techniques back into your organization are very important, and training people on these kinds of things. We talk, for example, about day-to-day meetings. That becomes a combination of this second element as well as the third element, which is processes to mitigate bias. Let's talk about day-to-day meetings as an example. When you have a meeting, are you employing really simple techniques as far as roll call and understanding who is speaking up at various times during a meeting? That is a pretty simple process. It also creates awareness and helps people be aware of who's speaking a lot in a meeting and who's not. I know these things seem really basic, but when you don't use them, you actually, squash a lot of opportunity for people to be included. And honestly, this is another example, if you think of meetings, that it actually encourages and provides more access to everyone, which kind of serves multiple purposes. The last element is developing programs to foster inclusion and development. And as we scoot along, I will give you some examples of how you can develop those programs. Something else I'll mention quickly is that depending on where you are and what group you're leading, you can affect change on a number of levels. even if your whole company does not have a JEDI initiative, you can change these small things. You have control over how you run your meetings. You have control over those day-to-day interactions, those program assignments, those project assignments, all of those things. You can increase your inclusion by changing the processes that you use. So we have our last polling question, and I'm just curious, what part of your organization are you trying to affect change? Does this apply just to your core team? Does it apply to a larger department? Or is it the whole organization? So 75%, well, I don't know. Somehow we end up with more than 100%. Might be because I think I probably voted. So I don't know if mine's not supposed to count, but a good percentage of people affecting their whole organization, as well as probably 1 or 2 people with their division or their core team. And like I said, using this model and this perspective is very scalable all the way from a core team up to a whole organization. So as Brian mentioned, you know, these concepts are part of, you know, day-long classes that we normally would do. So I just wanted to give you a taste for each of these areas, what some possible actions are that you can take. Starting from the bottom, again, I did mention some of these examples where you can think about your values and how they consider those JEDI concepts into them, and reviewing and revising your mission and vision with more of an equity lens, making sure that it really does apply to everyone. I mentioned meetings, that's listed in under processes, but also talks about those techniques day to day that you would use. But a couple of other things I'll mention is the more that you can increase your network and perspective take, those are things that will increase your empathy. They will help you understand any unconscious bias and raise that awareness for yourself. That will enable you to be a better advocate and a better ally, and to foster others to do that as well. Processes, I mentioned meetings, but something else to think about, you know, basic things around thinking about how people like to be rewarded and recognized. Things even like team building events. Say, for example, one of your team building events is to do something social after work. I mean, this, of course, we're talking about maybe with masks on, I don't know, in a different land. But when you think about those team building events, are you catering them to, you know, someone who's a single parent that has pickup duty for their children after school or something like that? You know, we want to make sure that we're considering when people are able, and remove those barriers for folks so that they can feel included in going to all of the events that you put on. Programs, I hadn't talked much about this. You know, the studies show, and I'll show you some of the research in a moment, that mentorship programs and development programs are highly effective in retaining your top diverse talent. Much, much more so than, ironically, just doing training programs, which I say is ironic as we're training. But things like establishing employee resource groups, affinity groups, where folks can get together with people that look like them, sound like them, you know, have the same challenges and the same, you know, backgrounds and experiences as them, so they can come forward also and try to influence change within the organization. That's really important to encourage that. So there's many, many, many different actions that you can take under each one of these pillars. But as we come to the action planning part, I'd encourage you to think about the various processes you have, day-to-day interactions you have, and all of those things around the honeycomb grid, which when we get to action planning, I'll flash that back up so that you can see all those different areas. You know, maybe your board of directors needs to be talking more about this. You know, there's lots of different areas that you could address. Some research does show that voluntary training of this nature can be very effective, but mandatory training can be more counterproductive because there is that resistance of, I have to go to this. I mentioned mentoring and sponsorship, and I also mentioned those micro shifts in behavior. It's a lot about practice. I know that, you know, in changing, you know, things like gendered language, that is something that was ingrained in each and every one of us, and we have to unwind that. And so you have to practice, you're going to make mistakes, and you have to have a safe environment where you don't feel bad when you make a mistake and you say, I'm sorry, I messed that up, you know, I need to try again. I also wanted to share an example of a long-term roadmap. I think considering and action planning all of these things, starting out with listening and learning. You're here today, that's great. This is a good learning opportunity. Listening to folks who are different than you, different than the majority of your organization is really important, foundational, because as I like to say, my golden rule is do unto others as they would like to have done to them, right? So you need to understand them. Then you can move into reflecting on what your organization is doing and beginning to role model change. And then finally having those measures in place where you can analyze how you've done, make adjustments, and then get that flywheel turning more. So with that, I think Brian is putting in the chat window a link to a downloadable template that we have for action planning. And what I would encourage in action planning is to go through these 4 pillars, to think about who can help to make that change happen, whether it's someone within your organization, or maybe it's, you know, in a place where you need to go up to, you know, if you're not the head of your company, go up to higher levels in your company, go up to the board of directors to gain enlistment and commitment to these changes. And then identifying specifically some examples of change that are needed. And I think, Brian, we have time to give people a few minutes to gain access to that template and download, and then I'll let you pick it up to talk about our offer for today and some action planning.
Sure. The page that I did 2 things. One is I did find the link for Project Implicit off of the Harvard website. I put that in the link. The link I just gave you is a very simple landing page off our website that's got this particular template in. I've got 3 different versions for you. There's a color version, it's PDF. There's a Word and a PowerPoint version that's black and white, and you can edit. So download those, use them. I was able to throw the Project Implicit link onto that page as well, and we can come back to that and add some more valuable resources in the next few days. But so why don't we do what we wanted you to do. So we told you that, again, we wanted to create common vocabulary, which I think we've done. We wanted to increase your acumen, which I think Jen has done an amazing job increasing our acumen around this important topic. And then we want to make sure that there's the beginning of change. So we want to see some action planning. We want you to take a moment just to make some notes of where you're going to focus. You know, and again, there's a lot to do. There's a lot of opportunities. Picking one thing to focus on. So we would actually love for you to send us an email at info@thepeakfleet.com and tell us the one thing that you're going to focus on in the next 30 days. And if you want, we can check back with you in 30 days as an accountability partner. And if you happen to have questions or clarifications, again, you can use the same email. That email will go to both Jen and I, and we can follow up with you individually.
I was going to splash this up Again,
Yes.
just if folks are making some notes, these are some of the areas you could consider developing action plans around.
So yeah, we'll give you a moment to think about that. And if you do have questions, feel free to use the chat to let us know anything we can clarify. And then, like Jen said, we do have some additional resources. We've got a special offer for you today.
Should I go to that?
Yeah, let's see. So a couple of things. One, so we've told you that we're a values-based company. We told you we named our company after our values. We teach the peak quite a bit, and you know, we've talked a lot today about some of those aspects of the peak values. Persistence, the P, is very common in business. It's actually the EEK that we think it makes us special. And it's the EEK, the empathy, the authenticity, and the kindness that is so important to this specific topic around justice, equity, inclusion, diversity. We, so in addition to teaching the peak, we help individuals identify, clarify, discover their personal core values. We also help clients identify organizational, cultural values. The product we use for discovering your personal values, yes, is that we have a card deck. There's 55 values in the deck, and there's a process of going through of looking at the 55 and evaluating them and narrowing that down to the 6 values that are most important to you. Why don't you go back to the videos slide? What I want to offer you as a resource is at the beginning of the pandemic, actually, we wrote a blog around what was happening to us in terms of values. There's a lot of people who were really going through a lot of you know, feelings and emotions, and they couldn't quite put their finger on it. So we took some time to talk about what was happening, and we felt that it did relate back to values, that values were changing, shifting. Our core values were being tested or maybe even violated, or being reinforced during the crisis. So we had a lot of very positive feedback. Actually, Faustine and the BBB asked us to do a webinar on that topic in particular, which we can send you the link to that as well. That inspired us to continue the conversation. So we have been on a journey since March to go through every one of the values, 55 values in our deck, and one at a time talk about what's happening with spirituality, security, respect, resourcefulness, responsibility, what's happening with the value during a crisis, and offering you some insight and some actions to take individually. So that's all available on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, totally free. So it was something we wanted to make sure that you knew if you want to go deeper into values. If you go on to the next page, we do have a special offer for you. So if you want to discover your values, and if you happen to purchase one of our decks, we will, and you use the coupon code BBB, we are launching a digital version of this exercise so in addition to the physical deck, we'll send you a code so that you can go through the online digital version as well. So we'll run that promotion through October 1st. So again, another freebie for joining us today. And then yeah, wrapping up. So the last 5 or 6 minutes, any questions, anything you'd like us to clarify? If not, we would love for you to join us, follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter. You can, if you're on the Twitter, there's Jen's handle, my handle, but on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, we're at the Peak Fleet. And that's everything we have today. We hope you found it valuable, informative, action-oriented.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian and Jen. I don't see any other questions in the chat, but please reach out to Brian or Jen if you think of any questions today or sometime this week. This week is Small Business Week, so this is why we're launching our webinars this week, just to connect with all of our small businesses, just to celebrate and honor our small businesses in our community, because we greatly appreciate everything that all of our small businesses do at this time. This webinar was recorded, so we will go ahead and share the link out to everyone once it's uploaded. But thank you everyone for attending, and thank you again to both our speakers, Brian and Jen. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.